Thank Hashem that we're able to learn every day. It's chus of our learning. We should have the base of Mikdash immediately. All our brethren in Ukraine should be safe. And all those that need her for Shlema should have. Okay, we're going to start from Haravi B'Kodesh Pasal. I guess the basic thing that we need to remember here is that the Mishnah was telling us that there's stringencies in Kodesh, sacrificial food, over Truma. Truma is food that's given to the Kayan. Regarding purity. So Kodesh, what it says is that Kodesh, sacrificial food, can become Tameh to the level of a 4th degree. So it would work like this. If something was Tameh, let's say a sheretz is, there's a sheretz. A sheretz is a creature that, a lizard or something, that's Tameh. So a person touches the lizard. So that person becomes a Rishon. He touches some liquid or something. Oil, I don't know. That becomes a Sheni. The Sheni touches anything else that's not Truma or Kodesh, it's pure. That oil that goes on to anything, it doesn't make the other things impure. However, if the next item was Truma, then it will become pasul. I don't know, the oil touched some grain of Truma, so become pasul. If that grain of Truma, or if it touches something of Kodesh, touches something else, then it will become, that Kodesh will become pasul as well. Otherwise, it stopped at the second level. Otherwise, that's it. Yeah, that's what we're learning here. So, I'm sorry, you had a question? Okay. So, what we learn now is a Ravi B'Kodesh pasul. The term pasul means that it doesn't make a truma to the extent that it can make anything else tameh. It doesn't make it tameh to the extent it make more tameh. It only makes it tameh and it stops there. Pasul. That's the term pasul.
Pasul means it ceases to become tameh.
It becomes tameh, but it doesn't continue. It can't make anything else tameh.
Can it continue with the truma 4, 5, 6 from truma to truma?
No. Once it's a shlishi, there's no continuation. And by Kodesh, once it's a Revi, there's no continuation. Yeah, it can't make anything else tameh.
People also use the term pasul for parchment Torah.
Yeah. So the term pasul just means invalid.
Invalid.
The word tameh means that it's impure.
Right.
So when we say that it's pasul, invalid, what we mean is that the item itself becomes invalid, but it can't continue on. That's the term.
Right.
That's the terminology in Tum Tara. Ravi B'Kodesh Pasal Tanya Rabbi Yosi. Rabbi Yosi says, "Minayin Ravi B'Kodesh Pasal." How do we know that there's a 4th level of impurity B'Kodesh? So it's Vidinhu. It's logical. A lot of times, din, logic, is actually referred to as din means the rule, but it actually means logic. It's referring to a kal v'chaymer. Dinhu, it's a kal v'chaymer. It's logic. That's a term for logic. Ma mechusik kippurim shemutar b'truma pasul b'kodesh. What's a mechusik kippurim? A person that was tameh, he went to the mikveh, he waited for nightfall, but he didn't bring a sacrifice, which he's supposed to do the following day. Let's say he had to wait, 7 days or something. So he went to the mikveh on the 7th day. That evening, it was Hereb Shemesh, right? I mean, the sun set. He's already able to eat Trumas, the first Mishnah in Brachas. When we recite the Shema, when the Kayin is allowed to eat his Truma. The Gemara over there says that you don't have to wait to bring the sacrifice. You're mechusar kippurim, you're lacking your kapara, your atonement. He's lacking his atonement, he can still eat Truma. So if a mechusar kippurim can eat Truma, but nevertheless, he can't eat sacrificial meat. Why? Because he didn't bring a sacrifice. What gives him the ability to be able to eat Kodesh is when he offers the sacrifice. So he's only partially pure, but he's pure for Truma. So now we compare this over to types of impurity. Shlishi, third level of impurity, shepasul b'truma. By truma, that's pasul. Pasul means that it doesn't continue on, but it's invalid. Can't eat that. Is it not a kal v'chaimer that it should make kodesh into a revi? Now, there's a huge problem with this kal v'chaimer. Huge problem. but the kal v'chaimer is saying is we're doing this comparison that if we can eat truma by Mechusar Kippurim, someone that didn't bring a sacrifice, but he can't eat kodesh, so shlishi, which does not affect truma, should for sure affect kodesh. The problem is that there's a rule, dayil of amin adin liyas kanidin. Whenever we do a kal v'chaimer, we can never extend it any more than what we started with.
Isn't the third
Sort of
level
like, you know,
pasul?
how you raise water, you know, like, you know, you can never get it higher than where you started. You know, you can't, can't go high. So by a kal v'chaimer, you say, well, if a weak person can lift 10 pounds, so a strong person could for sure lift 10 pounds. That's good. But I can't say if a weak person could lift 10 pounds, then for sure a strong person could lift 20 pounds. You don't really know that. You only know that he can lift 10 pounds. So here we're saying, well, if a shlishi makes truma pasul, a shlishi, if I'm sorry, not makes, if a third level by truma is only pasul, so for sure it could make it's really a sheni could make a shlishi by truma pasul. So for sure it could make by kodesh tameh that it could make something else. Oh, hold it. We only know that it can make it pasul because we're comparing it to truma. Rashi asked this question. He says that the term daya lavamin adin, daya, it's enough what comes through logic, what comes through a kal v'chaimer, to be like the initial comparison. He says that's only if we don't lose the whole kal v'chaimer. Somehow we know that there's a kal v'chaimer here, and if we take if we imply that rule that daya lavamin adin liyas kanidin, then we're not going to have any kal v'chaimer. So we let the kal v'chaimer pass, even though it's telling us something more than where we started from. Anyway, what's our point? That a revi'i, a fourth level of tuma, a fourth level becomes pasul by kodesh of impurity. That's our point. Gemara says, we actually already have the third level from the Torah by kodesh, that the third level of impurity. It says, revi b'kal v'chaimer, but the fourth level, that's what comes with the kal v'chaimer. Shlishi la kodesh min haTorah minayin. How do you know you have a third level from the Torah? It says like this, Tiksiv. Pasuk says, v'abasar shiga b'chol tameh la yochel. Sacrificial meat that touches anything that's tameh, you can't eat. Now, what does it mean, anything that's tameh? In a normal case, we have two levels of impurity. So mila yaskina denaga b'sheni. Obviously, if it says anything that's tameh, it means it could even have touched the sheni, which means that you're not allowed to eat the meat if it touches a sheni. That means the meat becomes a shlishi, a third level. So I already have in the Torah that there's a third level. How do I get that there's a fourth level? And the fourth level was the kal v'chaimer that we said that if truma is pasul, and truma you're allowed to eat if you're a Mechusar Kippurim, but you're not allowed to eat kodesh. So for sure, a third level should make a fourth level by kodesh. Okay. Now we go to another topic because the Mishnah had 10 or 11 items where there was this difference between kodesh and truma. The next item was b'truma im nitmes chulu. By truma, if one hand became tameh. We're talking about where a person had washed his hands and he was guarding his hands, keeping them pure. You know, he washed his hands like we would do to eat bread. You know, he's careful with them. So the problem is that one of them actually touched something that's tummy. So what about the other hand? Is the other hand still tar? So for truma, yes, and for kodesh, no. That's what we said.
When it says going back, v'habasar asher yaga b'chol tamei lo yechel, is that literally like you can't eat, or does that
It's
also
referring to a sacrificial meat that touches anything that's tummy, you can't eat it. No,
But that doesn't, like, that's the second level.
we
Right?
said that
The
it
meat in itself
touches.
is the second level.
No, it touched something that was the second level. The meat becomes the third level. And that tells me that there's a third level in the Torah that you can't eat. How do we know the fourth level? So that was the Kal V'chomer.
All right.
We got ourselves to the third level with actual text, and then we used logic to get to the fourth level. Okay, so now there's a statement from Amar Rav Shizvi. Rav Shizvi says, "B'chiburim shanu, aval shlei b'chiburim lai." There's two ways of understanding what happened in the Mishnah. One hand becomes tamei. The other hand is considered tamei as well. Fine. Rav Shizvi says that that's not exactly what's happening. What's happening is that one hand is tamei, the other hand is touching kodesh, but the first hand is touching the second hand. That's why there's an issue. It's a leniency, but it's telling us that we're dealing with a different issue here. The issue is that there's a concern that if the first hand is touching the second hand and the second hand is touching kodesh, maybe this hand is also going to touch the kodesh. There's something else going on. So which we didn't have to learn it like this. You could just say that for kodesh, one hand becomes tamei, they're both considered tamei. Rav Shizvi is telling me that that's not the way we're doing it. We're saying that it's because it's in contact with the second hand. That's why the second hand is tamei. You say, well, maybe the one hand should make the other hand tamei anyway. So the rule is that a hand that becomes tamei would become a sheni. Sheni, I mean, it can't make the hand. A sheni can't make the hand is not like kodesh or truma or something. You can't make the other hand tamei. It's not a real. You see, usually we say if a person's tummy is tamei, we don't say, well, his fingernail is tamei. We don't say it like that. But here it's a tumah midirabanan. We're not dealing with the tumah midiraisa. We're dealing with a tumah that's only rabbinic. Let me give you an example. Remember we spoke about if you people would put their truma food together with svarim because they wanted it to be to stay pure, so they put it in a place where people won't come in contact with it. But then the mice were coming and they were nibbling at the truma. They were nibbling at the svarim, so they made a decree that svarim make things tamei.
Oh,
now that's a rabbinic decree.
Is that a Megillah?
I was going to say that. So
Svarim or just like
scrolls, holy scrolls make things tamei because
those,
they didn't want. So
that's interesting.
Yeah, so it's a rabbinic decree. There's no tumah on a sefer biblically, so if you touch a scroll, you have to wash your hands. So now people don't put their truma food within; it protects this one, or any liquid. Liquid, I think we say that liquid that's tamei, that would, let's say liquid that's a sheni, that would make truma a shlishi, we say makes the hands into a sheni. Usually the liquid doesn't make something, we consider it a rishon, and it makes the hands tamei as a sheni. Really, the hands should not become tamei at all. It was a sheni. Sheni can't make a person tamei. Only avatama can make a person tamei. The source of the tamei. But so this is a rabbinic tumah. So when we say at this rabbinic level, we say that the hands become tummy independently of the body. If one hand becomes tummy, the other hand doesn't become tummy. We said no, by kodesh both become tummy. But Rav Shizvi says it's not really that both become tummy. It's just that if one hand is touching the other hand while it's touching kodesh, then we say that the other hand is tummy as well. Okay. Abaya has a question. Yad neguva metami chaverta. A dry hand makes the other hand tummy. L'tami la kodesh, to make kodesh tummy. So if there's a dry hand that's touching the other hand, so we'll make kodesh tummy. Avalei l'truma, but not for truma. Now, when it uses the word tummy, that's quite serious. That means that it will make kodesh into a shlishi, just like the first hand. What happened? The hand was a sheni, right? It touches the other hand, it makes the other hand a sheni. A sheni officially could make a shlishi by truma. That's really how it should work. We're saying here it doesn't. This is a chumrah that one hand can make the other hand tameh.
One hand
But that's
make the other shlishi.
Can make it into a sheni itself, like the first hand. But that chumrah doesn't apply to truma. Normally, the first hand could be metame truma, because the first hand was a sheni. Sheni makes a shlishi.
Real
But
real shame.
yeah, it's not even a real sheni because it's a rabbinic sheni. Otherwise, the person would. Anyway, so but the second hand that comes from that's tummy from the first hand is only for kaidash.
So it's let's give it a name. It can't reproduce the way the second hand, the first
Because
hand.
the first
could.
hand, right?
So it's an imperfect
Right.
rabbinical shani.
Right. Yeah, an imperfect sheni. It only works for kaidash.
It's neutered.
So what does it do for kaidash? It makes it into a shlishi, and as you know, shlishi can make a revi for kaidash. Divrei Rebbe. Rabbi Yisrael Rabbi Yehuda Imer Lifsal Avalei Latami. Rabbi Yisrael Rabbi Yehuda, that's Rabbi Yehuda Rabbi Lai, his son. This was Rabbi Yisrael Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda is a student of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Yossi is a student of Rabbi Akiva. They're arguing, but it's actually not Rabbi Yehuda that's arguing. It's Rabbi Yossi, the son of Rabbi Yehuda. No, I'm sorry. It's Rebbe is arguing with Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda. Yeah, they're the same generation. Rebbe was the generation of the children of Rabbi Akiva's students. Like he wasn't the age of Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, he was the age of Rabbi Elazar Bar Shimon, his son. So here he's arguing with Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda. And Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda tells us that the first hand that was a sheni makes the second hand into a shlishi.
Right.
And the shlishi is lifsal, the shlishi can make a revi. But not that the first hand, which was a sheni, makes the second hand a sheni, which could make anything, which could make tameh. No, it could only make the second hand can only be lifsal. Okay, what's our problem? Abaya is asking a question. If we say that one hand makes the other hand tameh automatically, not because it's touching it, just because one hand becomes tameh, the other hand becomes tameh automatically for kaidash, hainu ribusa deneguva. That's what we're talking about when you said, well, the hand was dry. What are you saying? The hand is dry. It touches the other hand. We're saying that even though it's dry, so, and there's no concern that it was going to make the actual kaidash tameh. No, there's no concern that the second hand is going to touch the liquid that made the first hand tameh, because the hand is dry. What made the first hand tameh? It touched liquid that turns into a rishon, which makes the hand a sheni. But if the hand is dry, then that's it. Then the second hand that's touching the first hand should not become tamei. But if you're telling me that the concern is something else, the concern is that the first hand may end up touching the actual kodesh. What do I care if the first hand is dry? The first hand was tamei, and it can touch it's so close that it might end up touching the kodesh anyway. So what are you telling me that the first hand was dry? If the second hand becomes tamei without the first hand touching it, okay, fine. But if it's or at the time, maybe it's only at the time that it was touching the kodesh. Is that how it works? I'm not sure. But if there's a concern that maybe it's going to actually touch the kodesh itself, then what's the difference if the hand is dry or not? The first hand is going to be possibly matam of the kodesh. It must be not like Rav Shizbi says that the first hand becoming tamei automatically makes the second hand tamei, even if it's not touching kodesh at the time the first hand is touching. Itmar nami. We have another source that should be a question on Rav Shizbi that's limiting this case to when the first hand makes the second hand tamei to make the kodesh tamei only if it's touching at the same time. Another source that negates that. Amar Reish Lakish. Reish Lakish says, Leishano, this is only taught Eliyadai, only if one hand touches the other hand. Aval Yad Chaverai, but if it touches his friend's hand, then Lai. Doesn't work. It seems like the way of learning this is not that one hand makes the other hand tamei automatically, but one hand makes the other hand tamei when it touches the other hand, even if that's not at the same time that the other hand is touching the kodesh. That's probably the pshat that we have. So Reish Lakish holds that one hand touching the other hand makes the second hand tamei, but if one hand touching his friend's hand does not make that tamei, it has to be the same person. Whether he touches his other hand or he touches his friend's hand, that's going to be the same thing. It's going to make it. It's going to make the other hand tamei. However, Rabbi Yochanan adds on, ba'isa hayad. Which hand is touching the other person? Only the original hand that became tamei. Not if one hand becomes tamei, touches the other hand. The other hand touches, it doesn't extend like that.
It's imperfect.
It's right, it was imperfect. So it won't make the other person tamei, but the first hand will make someone else's hand tamei. And then Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish both agree to this, that this is only that the other person becomes tamei or the other hand becomes tamei. That's lifsal avalela tamei. There's a limitation on that. That it only makes it doesn't have the status of the first hand. The first hand could make kodesh tamei to the extent that it could make something else pasul, but the second hand can only make pasul. It's already one step lower. Now, we just mentioned that turned out to be a machlekes Rebbe and Rabbi Yehuda, which the Gemara is going to explain soon. That Rebbe said that that the second hand has the strength of the first hand to make tamei. And Rabbi Yehuda says, no, the second hand is an offshoot of the first hand. And it can only bring it to the one level down, not two, because it's already used up one. Okay. Now the Gemara says, Mimai. Where does Rabbi Yochanan know that the friend's hand becomes tamei as well? It says midik tani seifa, because in the Mishnah we learned shayad mitama chaver to l'kodesh avalei l'truma, that one hand makes the other hand tamei for kodesh but not for truma. Hasul lamali. Why do you have to tell me this? Hatanali reisha. We already said at the beginning. It says that when it comes to eating kodesh, if one hand is tamei, it doesn't matter. You have to wash both hands. So we already know that there's an issue with the second hand. Now at the end, you tell me that one hand makes the other hand tamei. Well, of course it makes the other hand tamei. You have to wash both hands. It said at the beginning. It says it must be elalav shmamina lasiyat chaverei. Rabbi Yochanan says, you know what it's telling me? That one hand makes the other hand tamei? Means not his own hand. His own hand he had to wash with it. Forget about it. He always had to wash the other hand. It must be that he can make his friend's hands tummy. That's what it means. Okay. Rish Lakish also changed his mind. He retracted. He was arguing originally with Rabbi Yochanan. He takes it back. He says Rabbi Yochanan was right. That whether it's his own hand that is being touched or his friend's hand that's being touched, it becomes tameh. But that's only if it was his initial, the first hand that touches his friend's hand, not if it's his second hand that touches his friend's hand.
So that imperfect, I said before, it's limited liability sense, doesn't transfer.
Right.
Maybe you wash both hands because that's what you do. You just normally wash both hands, not because it
Yeah. The only thing is that for truma you didn't have to.
you have to wash both.
Well, you didn't have to wash both hands. You only had to wash one of them.
So the other hand would always be on the same level as the one that's coming.
Well, that's going to be a machlekes Rebbe and Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda. According to Rebbe, yes, and according to Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda, no.
Okay.
It goes a level down. And what we're learning now is that Rish Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan agree with Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda that it goes a level down.
Why do they retract?
Why did Rish Lakish retract?
Yeah.
He seemed to have a good logic there. We said that based on the Mishnah taught us that you have to wash both hands anyway. So what does it mean when it gives us another chumrah of kaidesh, that one hand makes the other hand tameh? We already said before that there's a chumrah of kaidesh that you have to wash both hands if one of them is tameh. It must mean that it's talking about that one hand makes the other hand tameh means another person's hand tameh.
Lakish didn't know that.
Not originally.
Don't underestimate Rish Lakish.
Right.
The gladiator.
That's right. Rabbi Yochanan is considered the teacher of Rish Lakish, even though they argue. But it's interesting how they can argue. Everything he learned was from Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan taught him, but then he argues with him all the time. This is very interesting. He must have had either other sources of learning or his logic was like compelling that.
A different career. I mean, he had a background.
Yeah.
He brought to this.
That could be. Okay. This concept that we just said, that the second hand makes kodesh puzzle, that means invalid. That means that it becomes tummy, but that's where it stops. Can't make anything else tummy. That's actually machlekes tanaim, which we learned already. It's machlekes tanaim, but the Gemara is going to go through some other attempt to say it's a machlekes tanaim, and then it's going to come back and tell us, well, yeah, it's a machlekes Rebbe and Rabbi Yehuda. So it says, well, what's the source for that you tell me it's a machlekes tanaim? Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish agree that it's only makes the second hand only makes it puzzle, not tameh. Ditzanan, we have a Mishnah. Mishnah is in Masechtas Yadayim. It says kol paisel b'truma, anything that makes truma puzzle means a sheni, any sheni. Mitame Yadayim liyashnias. Not only does it make truma into a shlishi, but if you touch his hands, you have a big chumrah here that the hands don't become a shlishi, the hands become a sheni. And now the hands will make truma tameh. And he adds in the yad metame chaverta, and one hand makes the other hand tameh also. Div Rab Yeshua. A sheni. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a sheni.
It's a chumrah.
It's not.
Sheni makes a sheni. Yeah, how does that work? It's a gzeira on the hands. Right. And the Chachamim Maimrem, Chacham say, Yadayim Shniyah say, no. The hands become a sheni. Vein sheni is a sheni. A sheni can't make a sheni. So one hand doesn't make the other hand into a sheni, it would make it into a shlishi. That's what we're thinking right now. You see what's going on here? One hand makes the other hand a sheni according to Rabbi Yeshua, and according to the Chachamim, One hand makes the other hand into a shlishi. That's exactly the machlekes that the Gemara was suggesting, that there's a machlekes tanaim. How this works, we found it. My love, sheni hudlay of it, hashlishi of it. We said, according to the Chacham, it won't make it a sheni, but it will make it a shlishi. The Gemara says, no. Dilma lay sheni of it v'lay shlishi. You don't know that. Maybe he was arguing and saying that the whole thing doesn't apply, that it only makes the one hand does not make the other hand tummy at all. Says ain't sheni it's sheni. Maybe means that that there's no tumah. Okay, elakihani tanai. So we attempt again to find a what's the machlekes tanoim that the Gemara was suggesting, that there's an argument between tanoim how one hand makes other hand to what level the second hand becomes tummy. And the Tanya as the brisa that we quoted before that we know already. It says yad neguva metami es chaver. The dry hand makes the other hand tummy. L'tami b'kodesh avalei l'truma. Divri Rebbe. One hand turns the other hand into a sheni, which can now make truma tamei, or make kodesh tamei. Sorry, can make kodesh tamei, because now the kodesh makes something else tamei also, because kodesh could go to a revi. That's the words of Rabbi. Rabbi Yisrael Rabbi Yehuda Oisei Yad lifts alav v'leila tamei. Rabbi Yisrael Rabbi Yehuda says that no, it only makes it into a shlishi. One hand makes the other hand into a shlishi. There, we found the machlekes tanaim that we were saying that there's a machlekes tanaim. What one hand does to the other hand, we found it. Okay, next discussion. Oichlen neguvim biyadayim mesoyeves betruma. You're familiar with this concept of washing your hands before you eat like fruits that are wet? Yeah. Most people are not strict about this, but in Chabad, they're more strict. If you're going to eat grapes or pickles or something, you have to wash your hands first, just like you would wash for bread. Most people only do this at the Seder. At the Seder on Pesach, we wash our hands because we're about to dip a piece of onion or potato into, or celery or parsley into liquid. It's reason why because the food gets wet. There's a stringency that wet food could become tummy. It becomes susceptible to tummy. We have to wash our hands. That's that's the whole reason we do it. It doesn't matter.
Then you don't.
It doesn't matter. Once it got wet, it's
Wow, that's interesting.
I think so. I think that's how it works. Once it was wet once.
So people have carried over this idea into just eating fruit, just
right. So the Gemara says that if the food never got wet, if the food never got wet, then for truma you don't have to wash your hands. However, for kodesh you have to wash your hands anyway, even if the food was never wet for a sacrifice. I mean, how do you have sacrifice food that never got wet? Maybe it was a piece of meat that somehow that piece of meat wasn't wet from the blood of the whatever. What else could it be? Maybe it could be grain from the flour of a carbon or something, from a mincha. So it says like this. That's only for truma. Tanya, Amar Rabbi Chanina ben Antignas. What's going on over here? There's a rule that goes like this. In order for food to be susceptible to tumah, it needs to get wet. It's like prepared, the process. Now it's ready to be eaten, and that's why it becomes susceptible to tumah. When it comes to kodesh, we have a rule that because kodesh, a consecrated food, is so special that we consider it wet even if it never got wet. So we're saying over here, what are you telling me that if the food was dry, you have to wash your hands? There's no such thing as dry by kodesh. It's automatically susceptible to tumah. So what type of halacha are you telling me that if the food wasn't wet, you still have to wash your hands? Of course you have to wash your hands. You have to wash it whether wet, whether not wet, because it's always considered like it was wet. Gemara says, no, there's actually a chiddush over here, which is going to be a little surprising. totally different story. Totally different story. What's happening is he's not touching the food. He's not touching the kodesh. He's getting the kodesh into his mouth without touching it. Either his friend is feeding him, or he's using chopsticks. He's using some sort of toothpick. He's getting the food inside his mouth. So concerning washing his hands because of the kodesh food, that's not our concern. What we are concerned about is that at the same time that he's eating the kodesh food, he's also eating chulin food together with it. He's putting some ketchup or something on. Well, I don't know what. He's putting something on to this kodesh food that really those hands would not affect the chulin if it would be dry. The chulin, if the chulin is dry, it's not a problem. The kodesh being dry is yes a problem. The only thing is that he's now eating the chulin together with the kodesh in his mouth at the same time. So, l'kodesh gazerbu rabbanon, l'truma gazerbu rabbanon. What we're saying is that chulin food he has to wash his hands for when he's eating it together with kodesh, but that would only be if he's eating the chulin together with kodesh. But if he's eating chulin together with truma, he would not need to wash his hands if that food would be dry. Yeah.
We don't need that stuff though. It's only for Kohen.
Yeah, it would only be for
All this,
right.
working all this stuff over just to find out.
We'll
what
see in a
Kohen
minute.
can-
We'll see.
What was chulin?
Chulin is regular mundane food.
Oh.
Okay. Now we say ha'inin and mechusa kippurim. We said that they have to. We say they have to go to the mikveh. They have to wash their hands before they eat kodesh. What was the Mishnah? They said chichen tefillah. An einin, someone that's in an intense state of mourning, or someone that did not bring his sacrifice yet.
This is a long Mishnah.
Yeah. So he has to go to the mikveh before he eats the sacrifice. We say, my timer. What's the reason? We say, since you weren't allowed to eat kodesh. So we have a concern that if you're not allowed to eat it, then maybe you weren't so careful. If you're involved in eating it, so then we understand. But if you're not allowed to eat kodesh, so then we're not really sure where you're holding because you weren't allowed to. Yeah. We don't say it like this, but let's say this is like a bad example. Let's say someone is milchik, fleishik, let's say, for 6 hours. It's fleishik for 6 hours. After 6 hours, he can eat milk. But while he's fleishik, fleishik anyway. Doesn't realize was he eating more fleishik? The salad. Was there anything in the salad? Was there anything in the kugel? Was there anything in the? Because it's fleishik anyway. Can't eat milk anyway. So the reason why this doesn't apply is because we don't say you have to wait 6 hours from your last, salad. We say you have to wait 6 hours from the meat. But in this instance, we're saying no. We're saying that because you weren't able to eat kodesh, we don't know what was going on this whole time. You have to go to the mikveh again. Okay. Now we have a new Mishnah. It says chaymer b'truma. This is very like opposite, like ironic. The opposite way of thinking. The first Mishnah said chaymer b'kodesh. By kodesh, a sacrifice that's stricter than truma. We gave 10 differences of the strictness of kodesh. This Mishnah says, actually, truma has other things that are more strict than kodesh. Yeah. Okay. What are those things that make truma more strict? Remember, truma is what a regular homeowner or field owner, farmer, would give to the kohen as is the gift to the kohen. It was 2%, right? It's grain, it's wine. Remember, truma is trey mimeya, 2 out of 100. It's 1 out of 50. Chaimer betruma, stringency of truma.
Does the farmer have to be tahar also?
Yeah, when he separates it. Yeah, that's actually what we're going to learn now.
So we do this today.
We have to. We just don't give it to the kayan. We just separate it.
We
there's
don't
prob-
call anymore.
Yeah, but there's problems with tumma, with impurity,
Uh,
which create issues. Yeah. So Chaimer betruma shabi Yehuda ne'manam al taras yayin v'shemen kol yemais hashana. You see, what's happening is in Yehuda, in the area of Yehuda, which that's where the base of Migdash is. So that territory, if someone separates, let's say wine and oil, say that this wine and oil is going to go to the base of Migdash. So it's Kaidash.
it's quite a-
Let's say it's an Amaretz that did this, that separated it. We say that he was careful to keep it pure. Amazing. Usually we say the Amaretz is not careful, but because it's Kaidash, we say that he was careful the whole year round, that he kept it pure. B'shas hagisais geitais v'habadim afal truma. There was a time when they pressed the wine. I think the gisais is which one is the wine, which one is the olives? Does it say which one does it say over there? The olive press and the oil press. At the time when that was being done, at that season, we say that everyone took his kalim to the mikveh, and all of the oil and all of the wine is tar. Problem is, what happens immediately after that?
Huh.
That's the concern. So if it was kaidesh, we say that it's tar the whole year. But if it's truma, we say it's only tar. That's our only concern is regarding truma. That it's only tar at the time of the pressing. Let's say the time of the season of the pressing is over. Someone brings an amaretz, brings a barrel of wine to the kayan. Says, "Here, I got you your truma, but the season is off. You can't receive it from him because we say that it could be impure."
Expired.
You know what you should do? You should leave it for the next year when we say that it's all tar during that season, and then we'll be able to accept it.
Oh,
That's a little bit odd, because what was our concern? That maybe made it tummy. So how's it kind of? Okay,
Didn't you say
have
that
to
like
see.
the Amaretz is someone who's like not from?
Yeah.
quote unquote?
In those
So
days,
do
it
we
would-
just it's like the honor system in a way? Like how do you know
so
if their offerings?
the way we're viewing it now is like, even someone that's not from, but they go to Shul on Yom Kippur, so that's what we're viewing this. Even someone that's not
Really?
careful,
Wow.
but during this season they toivel their
So we
their
just assume
things,
that they do like something like this.
Yeah.
Wow.
they buy Hanukkah candles. Yeah, the law, it was like today we know the laws of kashrus, but similar to what we have with kashrus. That's what they had with tum and tara. It's a whole another set of laws that they had to follow. Very interesting loophole. What he says is that inside this container, this barrel, there's one revius in there that's kodesh. You have to separate it, take it out, and give it to the base of Migdash. So then neman, and then he's trusted on that, and then the whole thing becomes tar. Because remember, we said that for kodesh all year round it was tar. So here also it's going to be tar. Yeah, we're gonna have to wait for the Gemara to explain this, but basically, meduma is a mixture of truma and chulin that got mixed together. So if you have jugs of wine, jugs of oil that are mixed, truma and chulin together, so they're trusted to tell us something about that at the time of the seasons. and before the season, 70 days. Okay, we'll see in the Gemara what's exactly going on. Okay, the Gemara said that the Mishnah said Yehudin begalalai. This fact that they're trusted in Yehuda, that it's considered tahar, it's considered pure all year round. Why? Because they're going to be giving it to the Beis Hamikdash. That's only in Yehuda area, but in the Galilee, in the north, say no, they're not trusted. My timer, what's the reason for that? Rish Lakish says because there was a little thin strip of land that belonged to the Kutim. That strip of land made the area tamei because we didn't know what was over there. The ground was tamei, and you couldn't get the wine or the oil over there to bring it to the Beis Hamikdash. So we don't care what you told us that you were going to give it to the Beis Hamikdash. It was impossible to get it over, and it's not for the Beis Hamikdash. Wow. Gemara says, 1 second, that shouldn't be impossible. B'nesa b'shida teva migdal. Why don't you put it on an airplane? Or put it in a box in a tower, and in a wagon that's above the ground, where the tumah shouldn't be able to get into it because it says Hamani Rebbehi Damar Oil Zarak Lavshmei Oil. We're following the opinion of Rebbe that says that if you think you can protect it in a traveling tent, it doesn't get protected like that because it's not considered a protection. An oil zarak, a tent that's thrown, doesn't protect. The Tanya, starting in a brisa, nichnas l'eretz amim b'shida teva migdal Rebbe Matama. If someone goes into the lands of the nations, but he goes there in a box, so he thinks he's surrounded, perfectly surrounded. You remember the Kayanim, how they would walk into to the oil? They had a box that they would hold like this, sort of like a, you would step inside and close the gate, and then you would walk through the cemetery on the path. Now they put up a fence, so it's considered like you're not in the cemetery. But before they had that fence, the Kayanim would walk in this box. So if you go into the Eretz Ha'amim in a box, Rebbe says Yatame. Rebbe Bar Yehuda Mitar. Rebbe Bar Yehuda says that it's tar. It seems the halacha is like Rebbe. How did that work?
So when Avram
It's
and
interesting.
Yitzchak hid their wives, or whoever it was,
In a box.
in boxes, were they
Keeping them tar.
during that time?
Wow.
What a good question.
Very interesting. Very interesting.
Oh, that's pretty face.
Because how could they be tummy all of a sudden once he's in Abraham is fooling around with her, right?
Yeah, it's a different sort of tumah though. It's not like tumas nida or something. This is a tumah of tumas meis, right? The Gemara says, okay, so if you're following the opinion of Rebbe that you can't get the wine and oil over from the Galilee over to the Beis Hamikdash because a box isn't going to help. Why don't you put it in an earthenware vessel that's perfectly sealed, and then you'll get it over. Amar Rabbi Lazar Shoinin. Rabbi Lazar says that we learned ein hektish nitzel b'tzamid pasel, that sacrificial food is not protected in an earthenware vessel. V'hatanya, 1 second, or v'hatanan ein chatas nitzelos b'tzamid pasel. The water of a paraduma is not protected in tzamid pasel. That will become impure. But my love, but that sounds like hakodesh nitzel, that sacrificial food will be, because you're in that when you were talking about it, tzamid pasel, you only said that paraduma isn't protected. Sounds like other things would be protected. It says Lai Hamayim Shenim Kadashim Nitzam B'Tzam Pasal. You're right that the water of the paraduma, the mixture of water with the ashes, is not protected. But plain water without the ashes added would be protected. Not Kodesh is protected. It was coming to that we should deduce from that plain water is protected. Amar Ula, we have a problem. Chavraya mitchan begalila. Yeah, we had this. Moshe, remember this in the Gemara Nida. You mentioned it. The Gemara said that there were these this chevra, this group of people in the Galilee that would keep everything pure, even after the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash. Yeah, and they kept everything pure. What are they keeping things pure for in the Galilee? They can't get it down to the Beis Hamikdash anyway, because there's a strip of land that's tamei that you can't get it over. It says minichan, they would put it aside Eliyahu Navi will come. He'll purify that strip of land. They'll be able to get it over. Very interesting. Yeah, the Gemara neither didn't mention that.
So the airplane didn't work.
The airplane didn't work according to Rabbi. Yeah. We mentioned that at the time of the pressing, that everything is tar, even the Amaretz makes his kalim tar, and for truma we consider the wine and the oil tar. Gemara says Ramini, we have a contradiction. Hagoymer zeisav. Someone is finishing the production of his olives. Yeshaya kupa achas v'yitnena la'ani kayin. Before he finishes, he should leave over one box and give it to an ani. I don't know why it says an ani. Should give it to a kayin.
Poor priest.
Yeah. Question is why he needs to be poor. We're talking about giving truma, right? It doesn't need to be poor. Yeah, on the side, there's like a correction over here. That maybe it's not supposed to be ani. Le'ene kayin. Yeah. Amar of Nachman. Oh, so we have a contradiction. Contradiction is, you said that he's trusted for truma at the time of the season. And now you're telling me that when he's working with his olives, he won't be trusted, and he has to leave over one box that he doesn't get involved with, that he doesn't press. But you said that it would be tar. Now you're telling me that it's not tar. Amar Rab Nachman like kasha. Rab Nachman resolves the contradiction. He says habacharfi habafi. It depends. If it's at the time of the season, it's the earlier olives, then fine, he would be trusted. Problem is, this fellow has olives that are being pressed way later. They ripened later than all the other olives, and it's after the season. And we said after the season, he's not trusted. Amalei Ravada Barava Kagain Mai. Ravada Barava says, where would you get olives like that? They tell him back, Kaisen shel beis avicha. It's like the olives of your fathers that always ripened late. Yeah. I don't know, like the background to this to comment at all. But apparently, Rav Ada Barava's Ava, I guess his name was, that was his father's name. His olives were ripened late. Okay, Rabbi Yosef gives another teretz. Rabbi Yosef Amar Begalila Shana. Rabbi Yosef learns a different pshat in what we were saying. We learned in the Mishnah that in Yehuda, they're trusted the entire year for oil and wine that's going to the Beis Hamikdash. For truma, they're trusted in only in the season. But was there a limitation of what area they were trusted in the season? Was it only in Yehuda? Yeah, if there would be a semicolon after the word should be Yehuda, and then it would have the two cases, that would have helped. But the Mishnah doesn't have that. So we don't know. Is that are the two cases both in Yehuda, or is only one of them in Yehuda, and the second case was everywhere? Right. So Rabbi Yosef tells us Begalila Shanu. It was really talking about only in Yehuda. So why over here were we not trusted? Over here we're not trusted because it was in the Galilee. Even for Truma, you're not trusted at the time of the season. In other words, in the Mishnah, both.
Is this still regarding Kutim?
No, this is talking about oil and wine. Do we consider it pure if it's coming to us from an Amaretz? So we said Kodesh in Yehuda, the whole year was considered pure. Truma, we didn't mention if it's only in Yehuda or not. We said, but it's only pure at the seasons. So Rabbi Yosef is saying that it's only in Yehuda where it's trusted to be pure at the seasons, at the right season. But in the Galilee, it's never trusted to be pure, and that explains his price. Isvei Abaya. Abaya is a student of Rabbi Yosef, and he asks some questions. He says, 1 second. I don't accept your pshat. He says, Ever Yardin v'Galil harein ki Yehuda. across the Jordan and the north of Israel. That's the same like Yehuda regarding Truma. And Amaretz is trusted at the wine during the wine pressing and at the oil during the oil pressing. But not in off season. It's a problem. Rabbi Yosef said that the being trusted was only in Yehuda. Abaya brings a proof from a brisa that it's even not in Yehuda that they're trusted. He didn't learn the right pshat in the Mishnah. You would just put Sheb Yehuda ne'amanim al taras yain v'shemen shel koyin mesashana kama, and then ubeshasa gites v'abana afal chuma was a new case, nothing to do with Yehuda. It's everywhere, according to the way Abaya is learning it based on this brisa. Okay, where it says the answer that we gave earlier is the correct answer, that it depends on when the olives ripened. If they ripened on time, then they're trusted. If they ripened off season, then they're not trusted. The Mishnah said that if the season passed and they bring to the kohen the barrel of wine or the barrel of oil, you should not accept it because it's going to be considered tamei. They should hold it until the season of pressing, and then it's going to be considered tar. That's Rav Sheshes, an interesting question. Why doesn't the kohen accept it and not use it till the gasaba, till the time of the pressing? Maybe it'll be tar. Amalei tanisua. So 1 second, we have a brisa that discusses this. It's a Mishnah, maybe. Tanisua. I don't know if tanisua is a brisa or a Mishnah.
Mishnah, it says.
Oh yeah, Mishnah. Great. I'll accept it. Yeah, Taisa says, Masnisnim Periklov to Demai. Chaver Amaretz. So you have two brothers. One's a Chaver and one's an Amaretz. Sheyorshu Esaviyah. The father passed away. And they're inheriting the property, the possessions. Amaretz Yachalaymar. Sheyorshu Esaviyah Amaretz. Yeah, inheriting their father, that was Amaretz. Yachal Leimerloi, one can tell the other one, what he wants to do is like this. The Chaver wants to get the grain that was never susceptible to Tumah. So he tells his brother, he says, we're splitting this up. You take the grain that got wet, and I'll take the grain that didn't get wet. And that's fine. And they divide it like that. And it's not like he's getting his grain from an Amaretz that was susceptible to Tumah already, because there's a concept called Breira, that the way it was divided now, that was the initial division originally. And you can say that if it's the same species, chitin with chitin, you can say, well, this part was mine. Tolata yayin, he says, you take the wine from there, and I'll take the wine from here. How do you divide up the wine like this? I'm not sure what he's going to gain by different wine. Does it say why one wine would be better than the other one for the chaver?
One was dry.
A dry wine. He can't tell him that you take the liquids, and I'll take the dry produce. Can't say that. You take the wheat and I'll take the barley. Can't say that. Why? Because even if he does say that, we say that everything that he got had already belonged to his brother and is now going to him. And once it was in the hands of an Amaretz, doesn't help. Now that it's going over to him, it's already tamei.
Why did it go to his brother? What's it split up?
It wasn't split up yet, but what we say is that.
Isn't it probate?
Yeah, probate. That's the problem. It's because it's in probate. So we say that it belonged to everyone at that time before the division. You see, if we can divide it properly, then we say that there was no probate. It went directly from father to this son, from father to that son. But if it gets into that probate, that estate type thing,
Wait, can we
So-
ask the estate lawyer, does it belong to everyone in probate technically? Or is it belong to no one during probate until it's decided? Because that would make the difference in Mara. What's,
would there be any?
what's
No, would there be
English?
Would there be any difference in American law if they all own it or if no one owns it?
So it's like a state property. There's a pecking order, like it's first. Creditors get first. And the lawyers first. Then after all the creditors are paid, then
But I'm asking is, let's say, is it considered that income that these people got before it gets distributed to them, or is it considered that they didn't have that income? When do they pay taxes on it? When they actually get it. So it's not considered theirs.
Right.
It's not considered there unless you don't, unless taxes doesn't prove that.
So
State
that-
would
Yeah.
that doesn't
Okay,
go-
whatever the case is, back to this, is it considered owned by the Amaretz? Because it was divided right away. So it depends how the division's taking place. If they're each taking half of the same thing, then it's considered that it was originally divided. But if this one's taking this item and that one's taking that item, this one's taking wheat, this one's taking barley, then we say that they're actually dividing it from between themselves, and it's not the original inheritance.
Another question, I'm sorry, quick. Isn't this unethical what the Chaver is doing? He's saying, oh, like, I'm giving you the stuff that's not really
Oh,
kosher.
you're right.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like a
That's-
Lefnei Evil or
That's
something.
actually how Rashi is putting it. Rashi puts it that there's an issue of Lifnei Iver. Yeah, very good. Very good. Yeah.
Not just a pretty face.
Very good. The Tani Allah, and it was taught on this, Eisich Haver, Seiref Halach, Aminiach HaSiyavish. The way that what the Gemara wants to understand this right now is that when he gets his liquid inheritance, referring to oil, what can you do with oil of truma that's tameh? You use it in a lamp. You use it to burn. It's good oil for burning, but it's not oil for eating because it's truma. Truma that's tameh can't be eaten. Interesting thing is truma that's tameh, if it's oil, could be burnt, and you could enjoy it while it's burning.
Can you use it Hanukkah timber?
The Mishnah says that on Shabbos you can't use Shemen Sreifa. That's the Mishnah, B'lei b'Shemen Sreifa. Remember that? Shemen Sreifa, the Gemara says. From Bameh Madlikin? So,
Can't use oil.
I'll stop asking questions.
Shabbos, you can't use oil.
you can use olive oil on Shabbos, but you can't
To
use
light.
olive oil to light, but you can't use olive oil that's truma that was supposed to be burnt. And you're not supposed to use that. The question is, can you use things that you can't use for Shabbos, for Hanukkah? That's the Gemara's discussion. I think the Gemara says that you can. So,
Is there like a Masechta or anything for lighting Shabbos?
yeah,
candles? Oh, there
in
is?
chapter 2 in Shabbos.
Ah,
Yeah,
but
Bameh
it's-
Madlikin it's called. With what oils can you use for Shabbos candles?
uh-huh.
Or what oils, what with?
But it's Durabana. It's not.
Yeah, it's all durable. Yeah. It's all concern. It's discussing, you may be adjusting the way. So we're saying that he burns the what he gets that's liquid, and the dry things he leaves. Why does he have to burn it? According to the question that they asked Reb Sheshes, he could leave it to the time of pressing, and then it will be pure. He doesn't have to burn it. It's a raya. You can't leave it. It has to be given to you at the time of the season. Not that you get it. And the Gemara answers, the Gemara says it's not a real proof. You know what we're talking about by you burn it? B'davar she'ein like gas. We're talking about something that doesn't have a season. What do you mean something doesn't have a season? You know what we're talking about? So we had two ways of understanding seirif, that you burn it. One way was that it's oil and you burn it as fuel and you can use it as light The other pshat now, which changing the pshat in Seirif, that you burn it means you destroy it, not that you get benefit from it by burning. What are we talking about? Talking about something that doesn't have a season of pressing. We're talking about like a beer that's made out of dates. That when you burn it, you're burning it as fuel. You're just destroying it. So Gemara says, but didn't we say that on holidays that we consider these items pure? It says, we're talking about something that would go bad by the holiday. Let's go a drop further. If the person says that I've put into it one revius of kodesh, of consecrated oil or something, so then he's trusted. Tanan Hassam, it's taught in the Mishnah, Beishamai, Beisilel, Maidim Beishamai, Beishamai, and Beisil agree, Shabaitkim Laisi Pesach, Main Baitkim Laisi Laichle Truma. If someone needs to get to the base of Mikdash, he needs to get to eat his sacrifice, the carbon Pesach. The problem is that in order to get there, he has to cross a base of pras. That's a field there's a grave that's lost in there because it was plowed over or something. Oh. We said that he can walk along and blow on the soil, like as if he's swimming, blow on the soil and inch his way through the field, because he'll be able to check if there were any bones there, and if not, he moves them aside, he won't go over them. So and we're talking about that the size is small enough that it won't make him tamei ba'il, it will only make him tamei b'maga, and he'll be able to blow it aside so he won't touch it. Okay. You can only do this if you want to eat the carbon Pesach. You can't do this if you want to eat Truma. My baitkin, what is this baitkin? Person can blow his way through this base of pras and go. Rabchia Barabba Mishmeidul Amar base of pras nidash tar la'ise Pesach. Rabchia Barabba says the name of Ula. It's interesting. That Rabchia Barabba is a student of Rabbi Yochanan. Ula, what I would assume would be saying in the name of Rabchia Barabba. Anyway, Rabchia Barabba says the name of Ula, that a base of pras that's been crushed, been trampled upon, that it's considered tahar for people that are going to eat the carbon Pesach, but not for Truma. Lahimidu divrayim b'makam kares, laichleitruma midu divrayim b'makam misa. When it came to the carbon Pesach, in order so that you don't miss the carbon Pesach, the sages that said that a base of pras is tamei, they didn't want you to lose out from the carbon Pesach. But Leichle Truma, they said that it's fine. We're not going to be lenient about this. Ibailu, the Gemara has a question. Let's say he made it through a base of pras because he needed to just carbon Pesach. Is he now allowed to eat Truma? You weren't allowed to get through the base of pras because you wanted to get your Truma, but you were allowed to get through the base of pras to get the carbon Pesach. Now that you got through, are you tar for Truma? Or do we say that no, you went through a base of pras, so you weren't allowed to? Ula says that you're good. Once you made it through, you like grandfathered in. And Rabba Barula, Rabba Barula, I assume it's Ula's son, says that no, you're only good for Pesach, not for Truma. Amalayahu Saba was this elder. Someone said, Daniel told us from a Taisra somewhere that it means Eliyahu Navi. Don't argue with Ula. The Tanan was taught in the Mishnah. The Tanan Kava say, we have a Mishnah that says like that. It says like this. He said that if you have a barrel of wine that's for Truma, he's not trusted the whole year. He's only trusted on the seasons. But if he put into it, if he says, I put into it a revius of Kodesh, so then he's trusted the whole year. Trusted even for the Truma part. Once he's trusted, we trust him for the whole thing. So just like he was able to be trusted to get through the base of pras by blowing it for the carbon Pesach, so we trust him also for the Truma, that he is allowed to now eat the Truma. Okay, let's leave it over here.
Yeah.